Welcome everyone to our latest LinkedIn Live. Today, Sadie and I are going to be discussing the launch of our 2021 diversity guide in data and analytics. So this is going to be really interactive. So for everybody along the way, if you've got any questions in regards to anything that we're going to talk about today, please feel free to put it in the comments box and we'll try and get through as many as we can. Just as a way, by quick introduction, before we start delving in deep into what the guide has said this year, my name is Jenni Kavanagh. I'm an associate director here for our New York office and look after all of our permanent recruitment over here. So across all the different disciplines that we're going to talk about today, including data science, computer vision, advanced analytics, digital analytics, data and technology, and life sciences. And Sadie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sadie St. Lawrence. I'm the founder and CEO of Women in Data. And at Women in Data, our mission is to increase diversity in data careers. So this is a very timely conversation. As we all know, you can't improve what you don't measure. So really appreciate the partnership of Harnham for taking this initiative and measuring such an important topic.
Yep. And just to sort of break that down, so this is actually our 4th year of launching this guide. So it's not something that's brand new to us, but it's actually building on data we've been doing for the last 4 years. This year, we've had about 4,600 people respond and get involved in that. And what we've actually done, for those of you that have tuned into any of the Harnham LinkedIn Lives before or have followed us for a couple of years, we also have a salary guide. And so we've connected the data from what we launched earlier this year in regards to salaries, with also what people are talking to us about in regards to diversity and the makeup of their teams in their respective companies that they're working for right now. So the survey itself can be downloaded either from the link for anybody that's joined here or also from the Harnham website. So feel free to download that at any point. But I guess to start with, diversity is something that is absolutely essential to all of us, to everybody that is an employer, to everybody who is an employee. It's not something that's going away. It's not something that we don't want in an organization. And so the guide itself is actually more of a roadmap. It's not going to give you a solution to how you're going to solve problems within your business, but it does give you an idea of what we can do. And Sadie and I are going to discuss some of the things we talk about very regularly. My side from actually recruiting into the space, and Sadie from, founding and, looking after a global organization. So hopefully everybody will get some really, really valuable information from today. Like I say, please do ask us questions throughout. And I guess just before we sort of jump in, there's never going to be a one size fits all with this. So there might be some unique questions to your individual business. Again, feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we'd be more than happy to chat about it. So in terms of the way we've divided it, and we'll sort of go through, we've done it by things like gender, salary, age, disability, and you can read more detail in the guide itself. But I guess the place where we should probably start is gender diversity. So before we sort of jump in to discuss some of the facts and figures, I think it's important to note that gender, we know, is not necessarily binary. However, it was less than 1% of people that responded to our survey that identified themselves as either trans or non-binary. And so today, a lot of the stats that we have focus on what we know as women and men. All right. So I guess the first talking point, and Sadie, this is directed to you, but obviously women in STEM fields. So the good news is there's no change from last year in terms of up or down of where women are in the gender composition of teams within data analytics as a whole. I guess the highest one that we saw is digital analytics is about 39% of everybody in that field is women.
Yeah, so I actually am really happy that there is no change, just given the current environment we're dealing with, right? Obviously, we would love to see a ton of progress, but with all the reports, especially within the US, of what we've heard with, 3 million women leaving the workplace, and knowing that COVID has had such a major impact of women, it's great to see that within this industry of data careers, we still at least have maintained what we had from the previous year. So I think that actually really is like a key point to note, and know that, not taking a step back is in some ways making progress. As you mentioned, though, it's interesting to see how within the different sectors of data careers, there are certain ones that are a lot higher, such as the digital health, and then also how it's a little bit lower in some of the data science and tech. And I think some of the reasons we're seeing that is, just in what we've heard also again this year, with burnout in different, really the high tech industries, right? So when we're looking at people who employ data science and data engineers, a lot of them are in the high tech industries. And we've seen, and it goes in line with a lot of the reports we've seen, of just the intense burnout that these workers are having. And so I think it shows that, hey, not all data careers are equally related, and there may be some pathways that we can learn from those other companies and industries, in terms of what we can do to increase the gender equity in those other areas.
Yeah, and from a recruitment perspective, and anybody out there that is trying to hire themselves, you'll know the market has never been busier than it is right now. I think one of the greatest stats that we saw was there was a huge increase in women within life sciences. I mean, that doesn't go to show, especially we've just gone through a global pandemic. There's a huge need for people in the life sciences space to identify trends, patterns within viruses, and get vaccines, things like that. So that is really, really good to see. But you are right. So the ones that are in the highest demand right now are data and tech and data science. And they're actually down 25%, which is actually quite significant. And I think you make a great point there, Sadie, on things like burnout. We're also seeing now things like the return to work policies and vaccine mandates. There's a lot of things that are contributing to this, but it is quite nice to see that overall it hasn't been affected. And I think one of the things we can touch on a little bit later is, we have seen a lot more women come in at entry level, which is brilliant, because that was something that we were missing for a couple of years there, in that people going into the market were mainly men. So that is a really, really great change for the year.
Yeah, I think it's really encouraging and a highlight to see that more women in those entry levels are coming in. And I think it's also like a call to action for us too. And especially from an employer side of, okay, now that you're getting in the pipeline, what are you doing for efforts for retention and growth? How are you helping to develop those people? Because I think one of the things, that the pandemic highlighted was that people do get burnt out, and especially women are the ones who normally take a step back because of all the unpaid work that they're doing. So I think when I see that, I'm excited about all the women coming into this space, but also see it as a really big call to action to increase our retention policies, the work that we're doing for paid family leave, flexible work hours, and then leadership training to support them through their career journey.
Yeah. And I think that's it. I think because we've lost so many people as well, I think businesses really need to think about, okay, how are we helping develop people's careers in this space, and making sure that we are flexible and thinking about things that are really important to people. We have seen a huge amount of retention-based changes in businesses over the last 12 months, which is really positive to see. But I think one of the things, in order to make sure that this does not keep decreasing and we keep it going in the right way, businesses, should have thoughts or processes or ideas on how, okay, we've got more women now in our entry level roles. How do we develop those and, make sure that these people can become things like future leaders in our business and don't feel like they need to make a choice between personal lives and professional lives. And I think that's something we talked about a little bit last year, but is definitely at the forefront still.
Yeah, and I'd love to know from those tuning into the audience if there's things their employers have done that have been really helpful for them to retain and for them to grow within their career. I think the collective knowledge is really also how we grow in this space as well.
Yeah, please do feel free. Anybody, if you've got any comments on this, just drop them in the comments box. If you've got any questions in regards to it, we will keep coming back to this because it's a key part of when we talk about diversity, for sure. And then, so let's sort of link this up now to like the gender side of it with pay gaps. So Sadie, you actually noticed something a little bit earlier today. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. That created quite a ruckus, I think, on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was really excited about some of the findings that were in this report, and particularly to the pay gap. So we know there's still a wide pay gap overall. It's about 18% in the US. But the good news is it's a little bit less within data and analytics. So it's at 14%. And then it also dropped down from what it was at from 17% last year. So I think that's fantastic news to see we're moving the needle there and also beating other industries in this space. But I'm really passionate about this area because, giving women the financial freedom and the economic stability is so essential for them to support their life and their families and what they do. And is a big reason, goes back to that retention policy. From what we've read with what's happening in the pandemic, a lot of the women are stepping out of their roles because they're not the breadwinner. So if we can, in a way, all these issues are connected, right? So if we can start to solve some of the pay gap problem, there's probably a higher likelihood of retention because they won't be the ones who, are getting paid less and need to step down from their career to care for children or whatever the additional unpaid work is that they're doing. So I think this is a really key factor just in the overall retention and happiness of women working in the workplace. And I think there's, still a lot of progress left to be made on this, but great to see that we're moving the needle in this space.
Yeah, and this is something that I literally talk about daily with people that I'm helping build teams for, and also people looking to make a move. I mean, there's a lot of help here with, I know some of the laws across different states of the United States where employers can no longer ask what you're looking for, which has really, really helped. And especially within the data analytics market, like you said, like we're better than the national average when it's pay gapped. And one of the really, really interesting thing was it even dropped even further if both men and women had a degree in a STEM related field. That dropped to a 12% difference. Now, we do still have work to do here, but actually, having transparency on like salary bandings and, for level of experience and making sure that regardless of gender, you have to hit the same criteria in order to generate a certain salary is actually really helping the industry. And I know a lot of companies have adopted this mindset. And what we're really starting to see is things where, people are benchmarked based on maybe level of degree, level of years experience, or specific technical tools. I know some of the areas that are the worst. So I think, again, it's data science is the worst of these with the biggest discrepancy. I know it gets difficult when you're desperate for talent and you find a person who's staying very firm on a number to try and get them in. But I think for businesses, maybe not to join the craziness of what is going on right now and sticking to what they've set out as a business policy will really continue to help this.
Yeah, and you make such a great point on just how key that transparency is. And that's one of the things I encourage a lot of our members within Women in Data to do is ask your colleagues, ask people in the community. Within the community, we have a money chat channel and we do a survey report to see what are you making? What am I making? Am I somewhere in the area I should be? There's a lot of great resources with PayScale and Glassdoor. Just having that transparency of where you should be at is really key. And then also just, having that confidence to either stand firm on your number, to be able to negotiate. That really is where community or having a recruiter who's supporting you through those negotiations is really helpful.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's like where our role comes in. And that's why a lot of people prefer to come through a company like Harnham, because obviously for us, we're going to make sure that it is fair and equal and in line with the market. But we will also add to what you were mentioning about the pay scales, the Glassdoors. If somebody is telling us a number and they're outpriced in the market, we will explain that to them as well, because obviously we want to make sure people can keep developing and building on these salaries and things like that. So we really try to help. But actually, there's an interesting response here, Sadie, to something that you were saying earlier in regards to what companies are doing to really help. Morgan has mentioned that her manager has been really good about asking the team what they want to be doing now and in the future, and then making a plan towards that. I'm really glad to hear that you're saying, Morgan, that you don't take that for granted. That this isn't common, and it sounds like you've got a really good manager there who's actually caring about your development, and that is something that has to be really, really important as the industry grows.
Yeah. Hi, Morgan. It's great to see you. Yeah, I think that's so key is, having that communication and that leadership to support you, whatever stage in your career is in. And again, this is where that collective knowledge comes in, is we have someone who's here and sharing her story about, this is how I felt very supportive and excited and ready to stay in this career. I think if you're a manager or a leader out there, this really does fall on you to have those conversations, to take the time to listen. And it goes in line with, we're connecting a study called The New Normal within Women in Data. And one of the things we heard in regards to employee retention is just taking the time to listen is the first step. And it's super simple, but it's really just taking that time to listen and ask questions of like, hey, what do you want to do in the future? And how can I best support those goals?
Yeah. And that is super important. That's actually the best retention tool, from what I've heard from the people that we speak to every day. That's more than saying, oh, I'm going to guarantee you a bonus this year, or I'm going to just increase your salary to try and keep you. People in the market know they're high in demand. They know what you're doing and they can see through it. But actually, to your point, Sadie, like actually listening to them and being like, okay, where do you want to, like, how can I help you on your journey get to where you want to be, not just now, but a few years down the line. People remember that. And obviously Morgan has remembered that and valued it. And this is replicated across many, many people, not necessarily just women, but men as well. It's not exclusive to women in the industry, but it's something that is very, very powerful. So I would highly recommend anybody that is trying to employ people or has lost a few people in their team, this is something that I would recommend doing for sure. Perfect. All right. And then I guess one of the other things that came to the forefront, which we might get quite deep into, is things in regards to racial diversity. This is something that the industry as a whole is more diverse than the country is, but it's not fully representing racial diversity to its full extent at the moment. I think within data and analytics, 49% of all people are Caucasian, whereas we have 60% nationally. So that is a little bit lower. But like I say, diversity isn't always fully representative. And I think in the US as a whole, Black and African American individuals account for about 12% of the total of the US, but only 3% are in data and analytics. So it's not ideal. I think we've got room where we can grow there.
Yeah, definitely a lot of room to grow. And it really in this space is just unacceptable with how low these numbers are. And again, I really love this report because if you look at it as a whole, right, it looks diverse if you aggregate those numbers up. But given that we're all data people and in the data industry, we really know that you have to get down to some of the details of this. And, as it shows in the report, the diversity is really skewed because the Asian Americans are making up a significant more portion of that. And so it's making it look a lot more diverse. But really, we have a lot of work to be done for our Black and African American individuals. Just to be such a low representation number, I think, is really harmful in terms of what we're building and where we're going within this industry. And so I look at that point really as like a call of action for all of us, male, female, whatever ethnicity we are, to really stand up and support the work in this space.
And the good thing is there's so many groups that are diverse that want the support and are out there. So I think everybody that is maybe in the space, everybody that's a manager in the space, there's avenues you can go down to really try and change this, whether it's connecting with the high school you went to or your local high school about actually what are careers for people that are good in STEM fields, and getting people think about this. If we think about the future of this industry, it's only getting stronger and growing. And, as technology advances, the need for data and analytics professionals is continuously changing, right? But I don't think there's enough people that actually understand that if I'm good at math, I don't have to be an accountant or a teacher. I can actually do something different, right? I can go and start building drones or looking at how we map them or starting to build robots, things that is just, we can easily help change. The same with the colleges that we went to, being on the board of advisors or just connecting with them or being an outreach for people that might need a mentor in the space will really start to help this change. And I think this is one of the biggest things that we can, like you say, we can change this. And it's not costing us anything to do it. It's just something that we can spend a little bit of time connecting with people in our networks or, going back to places where we started, and seeing how we can help the next generation of people really understand the opportunities ahead of them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things I like to say is if you work in this space, whether you're just getting started as a data analyst or you're a leader in this space, you have a responsibility, in my opinion, to teach and to share your knowledge. And I love the idea that you said of like, go back to your hometown, go back to the community and school that you were a part of and see if there's an opportunity for you to go in there and be a mentor, because it really takes individuals making a difference and sharing the opportunities in this space that's going to be really helpful. And, just as you mentioned, I was mentoring a individual last week and they said, hey, I was really into statistics in high school, but nobody ever told me what I could do with this. And I left it and didn't do anything with it for 10 years. And here I could have been on this great career path, but I never knew these jobs were an option to me. And so I think that's just really a call of action for all of us who are working in this space to really take our knowledge at whatever level, be teachers, and be teachers in our local community.
Yeah. And there's so many different groups as well, like meetup groups of galore. Obviously, Sadie, you work for a fantastic one, and that people can come and help with, and get, just like I say, it takes time. It's just a little bit of your time, but actually that can ease this industry and really help evolve it, because I think we're going to have, more demand for people than we can actually service for the jobs that we need. So I think this is a big one. I mean, but the good news is, look, the future of this industry, when we talk about racial diversity, it is getting more diverse. And we have to really focus on that. It is going in a positive direction, slowly but surely. And that's what we need. I think 71% of those who are currently in their first role in data and analytics are people of color, which is great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And again, similar to what we're seeing with gender in this space, great news to see more coming into the space. And then again, just that call for mentorship, career coaching, pathways to success. And as Morgan mentioned, taking the time to listen. If you have entry-level individuals in your organization, sit down with them. Whether you're their manager or not, everybody likes someone who listens to them and gets to know them and takes an interest in their life. So I just see that again as such a call to action for all of us, to really support these new individuals coming into the space.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and we have a question from Helen here. Do we have any thoughts on how we can improve diversity? So maybe, Sadie, we can take this from your perspective and then from mine in a recruitment standpoint of things that I see, if you've got any additional points to anything we've discussed already.
Yeah, so how we've broken it down within Women in Data is it's really a two-pronged problem, right? Which is how many people are we providing awareness to of the job opportunities and help training them so they can get into the space, right? But then, as we mentioned before, just once we get them in, it's a pipeline too. We don't want them to fall out once they have the job within there. And so it comes from both standpoints of not only how much training can we do and awareness providing to get people in, but then what are really our retention policies? How are we supporting those individuals for every step of their career? How are we listening to their needs? How are we better understanding? And how are we making changes based on that? And then the second thing is it really does take all of us, right? Whatever your gender, whatever your ethnicity, you can essentially be an advocate, you can be an ally. It doesn't take much to listen and be a friend and support those who don't have equal representation in this space. So I really like all of us acknowledging the responsibility we each have in this space and taking action on that.
Yeah. And I think from a recruitment perspective, there's a number of different things that you could look at from this perspective. One of the things that I'm regularly talking to people about is we lose people in a process because they don't feel like they can ask questions around flexibility, religious holidays, working from home, like maternity leave, paternity leave, like things that are really important, or flexible working. Maybe people have to pick up children from school. There's a lot of things here that as employers, we should be saying this as a forthcoming. It shouldn't need to be a question that is asked. It also shouldn't be something we talk about when an offer is given. It is something that we should say, hey, here are some of the things we're really proud of in our organization. And we start talking about the benefits and like some of the unique factors that are actually inclusive of people that might not be able to work 9 to 5 in the office 5 days a week, or they might be interested in certain paternity leave, things like that. And this is something that we should be doing to sort of increase the diversity and making sure that we are flexible to different people's backgrounds. The other thing as well is thinking about how your brand is displayed. Mm-hmm. So things like, everybody that applies to a job, especially through us, the very first thing they will do is before they decide whether or not they want to apply, is they'll go to your website. What things are you supporting? What groups are you part of? How are you supporting your local community in building the skill sets? Are you working with any charter schools? Are you doing any charity events? Are you taking photographs of your team and are you putting them on your website and showing that you are really inclusive? Those things are actually vitally important. Again, quite simple things as a starting point. But they mean a big deal to people. If people don't feel like they are represented at your company, it won't make them want to come and join your company. And that is something that I'd highly recommend people thinking about when they're thinking about, trying to appear more diverse outwardly to people that are prospective applicants to roles. Yeah, so I'm going to move on slightly. Obviously, if there's any more questions in regards to this is something that I know Sadie and I could talk about for days. So we'll happily come back to any questions that come through, or if you think anything later through. But please do keep putting some notes in the comments box. But I'd love to move over now to the leadership divide, because this is one that I think we have some significant work to be doing. Unfortunately, there's a decrease in the last year, especially when it comes to people of colour in senior roles. But, as I mentioned earlier, so we're seeing an increase in entry-level people. I think it's about 56% of all entry-level people right now are people of colour. But when we get to these head ofs, the VPs, the leaders of the role, this does go down to about 30%.
Yeah, this is really concerning. As I mentioned before, all of these issues that we're talking about are connected, right? Between how many people we see in the industry, the pay gap, how many people are in leadership. And I really look at the leadership divide and the pay gap as factors that are contributing to what our overall diversity metrics are. anything we're doing, even if it's in an analytics transformation, we know it starts at the top. So if at the top you don't have that equal representation and diversity, it's going to be really difficult to carry it down through the rest of your organization. In addition, I think it just shows a key sign as well of not only support needed for entry-level positions and new people coming in the field, but then additional support is needed at this leadership level, and especially additional support for the minority groups who are currently in this position and holding a strong position of, being represented at 3%, that I'm sure is a very lonely space to be in. So one, if you're a leader of the organization and your VPs and executives are represented this way, it's really key that you're providing the resources for them so that we don't see even an additional decrease in this area.
Yeah. And it does. It ties back to everything. But also, how are we empowering people when they're at that mid-level to actually get to those senior levels, as opposed to just saying, we need to move these people around to different jobs? Like, how are we actually adding to the number? And that's the key thing. So it's like, once they're in the door, so we've got enough people at STEM now, and it's back to that point of like, okay, let's make sure we're asking these questions and thinking about their development. I think, I do want to point out, this is different per area of analytics. So, for example, I think digital analytics, about 30% of head of VP, people like that are women, which is great. Of the 4,600 people that responded to our survey and identified themselves as either in data science or life sciences, there were no female leaders. So I think there's area in those specific sectors that we should really, really be looking at. And even then, there was no or very few people of color in any leadership role within those two practices.
Yeah, and I think there's also a key topic here with benefits and how we're supporting people at that mid-level, right? So when we're looking at pathways, and as you mentioned, what are we doing to support the mid-level managers? The time we see that people become mid-level managers is usually in their late 20s and early to mid 30s. And that is the same time that people usually decide to have children. And that's the same time when, if you don't have great paid family leave policies or great, remote work or flexible work hours, you could be losing people because of that. So really, I think looking at not only individuals at each stage of their career, but each stage of their life. I think one of the things we learned in the pandemic is it's not work-life balance, it's just life balance. Everything has enclosed in upon us. And I think as employers, we need to be really thoughtful of this and looking at how are we supporting, again, each person at their career stage, but really their life stage, so that they can reach their highest level of success.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is just to, make a note, this is not to say that these people don't exist, but, from the reporting, it is very low levels, which isn't the best sign. There may be people out there, but it is currently very few and far between. And I know we've got another question here in regards to the pandemic and how do we feel the pandemic has affected diverse groups? Do we think it's made it better or worse? Obviously, you just touched on something there, Sadie, which is really, really interesting, in that it's not necessarily about work, but it's actually about life. And people have actually reprioritized what's important to them in life. And so, rather than people having to change their lives for the workplace, which was a pre-pandemic notion in certain scenarios, it's no longer the case. And we do have to be adaptive. We have to adapt. We have to change. Otherwise, nothing changes, right? And I think that's a really important thing for people to think about, because I don't know what your opinion is Sadie, but I think the pandemic has had an interesting effect on diverse groups. I think I wouldn't necessarily it's made it worse or better. I think people have woken up to realizing that they need to be more diverse. And that, that's not going to change, but people do realize everything we're talking about, that they want to make a change. And I think that is positive from businesses' perspectives, of that people are implementing processes to ensure that they are diverse, that they are trying to attract diverse talent, and that they're trying to retain it. And I think that's important to highlight.
Yeah, I think the positive of the pandemic is it has been a wake-up call, similar to getting reports and data. Sometimes it's not always what you want to see or what you want to know, but we need that information to know where we need to make changes. And I think we all hopefully we had a big wake-up call to realize how work is going today, and the work environments that we're working in, they aren't working for us, and they're not working for a large group of people. And so I think from that perspective, it's been a wake-up call, which has been positive. But now is really the time for us to take that information and make those changes. And I think it has disproportionately, affected minorities, particularly women. We saw a lot, which is how unpaid labor came to the forefront and, really was the breaking point for a lot of them. So I think in the interim, it was not positive, but I hope that this is used as a wake-up call for us to realize, hey, it's time to make a change. It's time to change some of our policies. It's time for us to adapt and to grow. And it's time for us to listen and pause a bit to really understand our people, our employees, not as what they do for their job, but understanding them as whole individuals and how we best can support them every stage of their life.
Yeah, I agree. We have a really interesting question from Stephanie here. Do you think enough is being done at the education level, so school, college, university, to ensure that diversity is improved across STEM and data and analytics? I have strong opinions on this one, but Sadie, I'm going to hand it over to you first and see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Thanks, Stephanie, for asking it. No, I don't think enough is being done. And I want to first start off and say I have a lot of empathy for teachers and for the education system, especially given the fact of what they've gone through these last couple of years with the pandemic and shifting to remote learning. They've had a lot on their plate, and we all know that the resources in education are limited. So is there more that can be done? Definitely. I think there's a lot of opportunity to not only increase what we're doing in the STEM space, but also just to provide more awareness to what the jobs are today that are relevant, and what they're learning today and how it's applicable to, a high paying job. So I think there's a ton of work to be done in this space. And I think, again, a call to action for individuals is find the school you went to, find your local school, connect with them and see if there's an opportunity for you to go in, tell your story, teach a class, whatever it is. We need individuals who are in this space to take that leadership position as well.
Yeah, and I would wholeheartedly agree. I think the positive thing here is that all of these outlets, schools, colleges, universities, they want to change this. And back to Sadie's point, resources are limited, and that is back to where we come into it. And I agree. Unfortunately, not enough is being done, but this isn't purposefully not being done. This is because maybe careers counselors at high schools don't have this knowledge. They're not aware either. And if you don't know something, how can you impart knowledge you don't know yourself? Right. And that is where we all come in. I'm actually on a board of advisors for a university here, which I love, but this is a school that are passionately trying to change this, looking at their curriculum, looking at how they attract people. But also I do a lot of work with them on, again, how do I get into this, and how do I think about what role within data and analytics that I'm going to be interested in. And so, there are a lot of these education outlets that are really, really trying to make that difference. But like we've said, this is where we can all come in, and it takes a class, being a guest lecturer, doing something one-off like I do, maybe once or twice a year with the students that are either going to be graduating within the next 12 months or are just entering and starting to think about this. So we can all do our part. Great. I'm going to keep moving on. Like I say, any questions, comments, please keep putting them in the box. We'll try and get through them. But one of the things I really want to focus on now is the age divide. So I think something telling, and it is a common theme, is that the data analytics market is still young, but less so, which is positive. It's not like data and analytics roles are brand new. I think obviously we've got a lot of tools and technologies that have been, but actually it's quite nice to see that we've got a decrease in the number of professionals saying that they were under 35. So I think last year that was 54% and now we're 45%. So we're dropping that down, and that's 9% difference in a year. It's great to see, right?
Yeah, I think it's good to see. And this is really actually an important topic, is the age divide, because as we know, working in this industry, a lot of our work is actually automating jobs as well. And so when we look at the types of jobs that are being automated, they tend to skew a little bit older in the age space. And so how I look at this is an opportunity to retrain and reskill these individuals. We don't want to be taking their jobs, and we also want to be making sure that there's space for them in these new and emerging spaces as well. So it's great to see this is down, such a high percentage from last year. But again, I think it's really important for us to look at things like the age gap and how are we making sure that pathways aren't just for young school children, right? But also for those who are still working and still have a long lifespan of their career. How are we making sure they're upskilling and reskilling to stay really relevant in this industry? Whether you're in the data analytics space or you're just working in the business space, this is something that is a key skill for the 21st century.
Yeah, and just to throw out some facts there. So the median age in data analytics as a whole is 35. And I think the oldest populations sit in life sciences, where their median age is 38. And the youngest is actually the computer vision market, which is 29. Now, computer vision is more of a new area and something that is ever evolving right now, which is understandable. But one of the key things that I have started to see, which is super positive, and I would encourage more people to try and do this, if somebody is interested in getting into one of these areas, maybe they've got a slightly different background, but they've got some of the core competencies that would mean that they would quite easily be able to learn or look at something from a different angle. Then again, we all have a responsibility, and we should be wanting to do this, of taking a raw skill set and then training them, because it's back to that point of you're helping somebody evolve their career, which equals retention and loyalty, and the fact that you're developing somebody's career, but you're actually then part of the change in regards to the fact that this divide is still pretty young as an industry, right?
Yeah, and I look at this as such a great opportunity with career changers. They're bringing work experience with them. It's not that all of that is just thrown out the window. It's very valuable work experience. And in addition, they're probably also bringing industry knowledge, and that really comes into play in the analytics space. I think part of the reason we've seen so many analytics projects fail, I think it's about 80% still today of 80% of analytics projects fail at businesses, is because we don't have that industry knowledge. We're just looking at it from a technical perspective. And so there's a great opportunity here, not only to help retain your employees and provide new pathways for them, but to also increase the success of your projects by leaning on that industry knowledge and that expertise you may not be able to get elsewhere.
Yeah. One of the good things we have seen pop up over the last couple of years, and I'm sure many people that have tuned in will know this, is a lot of boot camps that you can go to and courses where you can also start to learn from experts in the field on specific markets or specific tech stacks, or if you want to move from data science to computer vision or engineering for computer vision, vice versa. There's a lot of these courses now that are really accessible for you to go to. And the positive thing I've seen is that prospective employers are really noting this and saying, look, this person is proactively trying to change their career path. And I've got a lot of time and respect for that, especially when you've got a personal life, probably a current role as well. And somebody's really dedicated to this space. And that now says a lot, which is great in terms of seeing it from both perspectives of trying to change the age divide.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Perfect. So the other thing as well that we have looked at is in regards to disability. Now, disabilities can often be overlooked, but I think that the stat in the United States is 1 in 4 US adults have some kind of disability. And so this is actually a really important subject. And actually only 6% of data and analytics professionals identify as disabled.
Yeah, I'm happy that you call this out because there are so many ways to break down diversity. And I feel like disability is often one that's not in the forefront of the conversation. And here, 1 in 4 compared to 6% is a huge gap. And I think, really looking to see what are we doing as organizations and individuals to shut these people out before they even get a chance. And then, given the fact that 30% of those have an invisible disability, do we even know, and do we have any programs to support them? Because this could be something that they're dealing with in their day-to-day life and we have no awareness of as well.
Yeah, and I think that's vitally important. And for any employers, interview processes, tests, live coding sessions, things that people have to do at home. I think we really do need to shake up processes so that we have maybe options for people to do rather than this is our process, like it or lump it, because unfortunately then you are contributing to the problem and not trying to help solve this. And like you were saying, Sadie, like a lot of these disabilities are hidden and they're not things that people are going to say, hey, I've got X at application stage, nor should they have to. No. But as employers and people in the space, we should be thinking about, is this an inclusive process to actually ensure we're getting diverse talent on our teams? And, maybe somebody doesn't do well in a test, but they do well if you give them some time to sit and think about it. Or maybe, like a brainstorming session where you're talking about ideas, but not challenging somebody to sit there and string some code in front of an audience. It's not the easiest. It's not.
I'm so happy you bring up the technical test because I think that is a key differentiator that's in our industry, right? And maybe one of the reasons that we're seeing such a low representation. And knowing that, again, we are as employers and organizations are not the ones to say, hey, this is our process and everyone needs to fit into our box. Because that is how we continue to increase this divide. So really taking a look at those processes with the lens of how are we being inclusive so that everyone has the opportunity to show up as their best self in this instance.
Yeah, I do just want to say from one perspective, I understand why employers do this in terms of trying to be fair and that everybody gets the same process. But actually, potentially then for everybody, we need to give a 3-option technical round maybe, because they are literally 90% of every role that we work on within the entire space will have some sort of technical assessment, but just trying to think about, do we give people options and let them choose what's best for them, as opposed to like you were saying, this is our process, to be fair.
And I think it goes back to questioning also, like, does your interview process match your values as an organization? If your values as an organization are learning and growth and communication, are you assessing those the same way you're assessing some of the technical skills in the beginning of the process. So that's what I would say is, really make sure that your values match your hiring process.
Yeah. And I think even taking this back to, that's more, I guess, an invisible disability, but let's think about people that actually have a mobility or a physical disability, that they account for 7% of people in the space. How are we accommodating to that too, right? So I think just to round this area out, hopefully with the increase in things like remote working in a post-COVID world, this may offer new and more accessible opportunities for those with physical or mobility-based disabilities, but something for companies to think about now that people are thinking about return to work policies, and how accessible is your building and office and things like that. So just something to bear in mind, I think.
For sure.
Perfect. Okay, just as a reminder, please do feel free if you've got any questions. We're going to be live for another 10 minutes or so. Please do feel free to put them in the box, or any comments in general. We really like to hear from people that are sat in the space as well. But I think one of the final areas that we also focus on in the guide is about the benefits divide. And I know we've touched on this a little bit throughout our conversation, and I mentioned it earlier, but I think the key thing here of what came from this survey that we did was about transparency of benefits. It is the opener to improve diversity, because it's something that you can do without anybody having to ask a question or not know something, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the correlation again between all of these, where transparency is really a key factor, not only in the benefit side of things, but also what are your diversity metrics at your organization? What's your transparency around equal pay, etc.? And so I think it's interesting to see this pop up as well on the benefit side of things. Really what I'm kind of getting from people with this report is that they want more communication between employees and employers at every stage and every variable within their career.
Yeah, and I think you've got to remember as well, different benefits are prioritized by different individuals. So it really is essential that you're just offering things out in a recruitment process. Because I think, for example, for women, the number one sought after benefit was health insurance, which actually tied in for men as well, which I thought was very, very interesting. But the second one for women was working from home. And the second one for men was a bonus. So, it's just making sure that we are sort of catering, not assuming situations based on gender, but actually back to what we're saying about transparency.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the bonus and the working from home swap for the men and the women. I mean, between the second and third places, so not too much. But also, I think, and you'd have to give me more information on this, but probably a rise in the working from home options now due to the pandemic, right? So I think that's an interesting part to understand how the pandemic has had an effect in our work environment. Is employees are expecting and wanting work from home options.
Yeah, and that's it, and I can give you some facts on this, because it was women, disabled individuals, and Caucasian professionals ranked the highest in working from home being one of their top priorities, whereas males did not, and neither did people of color. So actually younger professionals as well, they were very, very focused on having flexibility, which I thought was kind of interesting, especially when you're quite new and you kind of want to absorb from as many people as possible. But I think that was something that was really interesting. And just from a recruitment perspective, that is the number one question we are asked. Is this role remote, and how much am I expected to travel? I think we think we're far away from COVID, but it is still very much here. And people don't feel comfortable, but they also don't want to.
Yeah, I think a big key here is just how much of a factor it has impacted in our lives and changed in the way we work. Where before, working from home was a nice to have, and now it's almost a must-have. I mean, second for women and third for men. I mean, that's above 401k matching, which I think is incredibly surprising. We oftentimes think that employees are looking for additional financial benefits, but really what we're hearing is saying, hey, take care of me, give me health insurance, give me flexible hours, let me work from home. Those are the things that really matter.
And do you know what? That's ironic because it's the first time ever in us doing this that health insurance has been the top one for both men and women. So it's really interesting, but it's back to your point of like that reevaluation of priorities. And, everybody's been on a journey the last 18 months, whether that's, looking after physical health. Maybe you've been affected personally by COVID. Maybe mental health has not been great, depending on your circumstances at home while you were locked away for months on end. So, I think this is something that people need to be really aware of. And actually, again, this could be the difference between you losing a person joining your business or not, because this is literally vitally important. So I would highlight to companies to look at your own health policies and what it covers and what does a family plan look like versus an individual plan. And, there's a lot of changes that have happened where this is now the most important thing over money.
Yeah, I think it's a real positive from an employee standpoint and an employer standpoint. I mean, if you're a leader, you understand that taking care of your people and having whole, well people show up to the office or show up in a virtual setting is the best way to achieve results and to hit your goals. And the fact that now we have employees who are asking for the same thing, they're caring about their health, they're caring about their mental health and having some flexibility with working from home. I think this is a really positive time and just how we're evolving as individuals and taking more priority into what really is important at the end of the day.
Yeah. Happy team equals productive team, right?
Yes.
Great. Well, that's basically all we want to talk to today. We've run out of time. Like I said, Sadie and I can chat about this for hours. If you do have any questions or comments on any of this, please do feel free to reach out to both of us. Download the guide. It's going to be essential if you're talking to your manager, if you're part of the process of changing things internally at your business. You can either download it from the link or go to the Harnham website. It's on there as well. And if you do work in a diversity or non-profit organization and want some exposure, please do get in touch with us. If you want to do a LinkedIn Live with us here at Harnham, please feel free. And obviously, if you're wanting to make a change, a hire, some advice, reach out to us and let us know. But thank you, everybody, for joining today and for your questions. Thank you, Sadie. I really appreciate you taking the time for joining us. Great discussion.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing and providing awareness to this really important subject matter. It's really going to take all of us coming together to make a change. And I think understanding where we're at today is the first step.
Great. Thanks, everyone.